Hello, I'm Dr. Robert Cialdini, founder of the Cialdini Institute for Influence. I want to introduce you to one of my licensed and certified coaches, Patrick van der Burgt.
There is a moment of power after someone says no to you. If you know what to do in that moment, you can turn a no into a yes.
Patrick is a valued coach of the Cialdini Institute and has completed all the necessary course requirements to help you and your team understand and apply the scientifically proven universal principles of influence.
So I'll be talking to you about ethical persuasion, and it can be considered the ultimate business skill. And you're in the right place because top leading organizations in the world are recommending businesses to develop this skill. The World Economic Forum does a study every 2 years. It's called The Future of Jobs. And 2 years ago, they published it and they ranked leadership and social influence in position number 4. Last January, the latest report came out and they increased it to position number 3 because in the world where AI has made its introduction, things are getting a little bit uncertain, and it is our interpersonal skills that are becoming more and more important. Okay, now we can influence people in many different ways. The problem with both those scenarios is that they might have short-term results, but they don't tend to produce long-term success. What we want to focus on is ethical persuasion, where through the use of words and images, we can move people in our direction. And science shows that that produces both short-term and long-term success. So today is all about ethical persuasion. 25% of people said, yes, I will do your 15-minute survey. But when it was preceded by the 60-minute survey request, then the 15-minute request, now 44% of people said yes. Now that's the same request as before, a 15-minute survey. The only thing that was different was what came before it, right? Okay, so what has happened here is a concession. Now let me explain that to you. You can use this unethically, but research shows it is short-term win, long-term disaster. Because nobody returns to a situation where they didn't do well in the negotiations. That if someone says no to you and you retreat from the moment, then you lose, right? If you leave the room, if you hang up the phone and ring them back a minute later, you lose. All you get is endless no's. Okay, so other organizations are also highlighting that persuasion is important. Forbes published a study done by CashNet. They looked at 17 million jobs listed on Indeed.com, and they looked at what are employers asking for. 3 of those, negotiation, persuasion, and presentation skills, you need to be persuasive for. Meetings, as a result of those phone calls, went up by 20%, and signed contracts went up by 15.5%. Both these gentlemen have a connection with my business partner, Dr. Robert Cialdini. Dr. Cialdini was part of the election campaign of Barack Obama's election campaigns in 2008 and 2012, and we know that those turned out pretty successful for him, right? But for today, the other gentleman is actually more important. So he says when it comes to decision making, your brain has 2 parts, or anybody's brain has 2 parts. There's system 1. System 1 is fast. It's an unconscious process. It happens automatically, and we use it for everyday decisions. On the other side, we have system 2. So system 2 is slow. It's a conscious process. When you're sitting there writing an email, thinking about how am I going to convince that person to do as I asked? How am I going to get my teenager to clean up their room? Right? You're now using conscious thought, therefore you're using system 2. Daniel Kahneman demonstrates in 2002 that 90% of our decisions are made by system 1. And now that's said to be 95%. They've just told you that they've bought a house, and they say something along the lines like, well, it was a bit above the budget, but we just love the place. Had to buy it, right? That's not logic and reason. They did do all this system to work, but when decision-making time came, System 1 took over. There were other decision triggers involved. And he learned what those companies were teaching their new employees, because every business works out particular strategies that work really well for them. Instead of looking for what made what they did different, Dr. Cialdini looked, what is it that makes this similar? What is it that makes this work regardless of the industry you're using it in? All right, so let's look at a little bit of science on this. So KPMG did some research. Those who had a weak relationships were 30% successful in getting agreement from their clients. With an average strength relationship, it was 45%, and with a strong relationship, it was 70%. That is more than double. That's great, Patrick, but doesn't it take months and years to build a relationship with people? Then a little later, researcher comes back in the room with somebody who's dressed very professionally. At that moment, brain activity, well, we won't say stopped, but it was operating at a much, much lower level. Now, what I find fascinating, that person hadn't said anything yet. It was just the introduction. And the brain goes, oh, thank goodness, someone who knows more about this than I do, and they were happy to give over that decision to someone else. Gordon added 2 words to this exact sentence that would drop no-shows from 30% to 10%. What on earth? Which 2 words could have such an impact? McFlurry sales increased by 55%. Now, there was an opportunity for a second upsell in this situation because, personally, I don't eat McFlurries, but if you get a topping on that, the topping is optional. As a result, topping sales went up by 48%. Now, just for a minute, imagine how much money this is worth to McDonald's, right? And now imagine how many millions they've lost out on by not knowing this 20 years earlier.